I didn't come to the hospital to start a war. But if you're reading this on Reddit Betrayal Diaries or one of those revenge stories subreddits where family drama meets late-night popcorn, then you already know wars don't announce themselves. They quietly print out forms. The nurse slid a clipboard toward me like she was dealing a losing hand in Vegas. And there it was. The line that wanted my future. Father's signature. I stared at the newborn sleeping in that plastic bassinet under a heat lamp like a croissant. And for exactly 8 seconds, I tried to believe we were still the family I thought we were. The backyard barbecues, HOA newsletters, her yoga mat drying on the porch rail, our refrigerator calendar that made us look organized and immortal. But the baby's face, my daughter's face if I signed, carried a geometry my side of the family had never met. The nurse's smile wobbled. My wife, mascara brave and ivy cynical, whispered, "Honey, just sign." I'm not proud of the way my jaw locked, but I am proud of the truth that followed. I put the pen down like a judge does a gavel and said, clearly enough for the curtain, the beeping, and the ghost of our marriage to hear, "No." Cue the soundtrack of American small talk, turning into family stories we pretend are private. Someone somewhere paged a social worker, which in a hospital is like summoning a paladin from HR. My mother-in-law tried to look maternal and dignified at the same time, which is a difficult pose when every molecule in the room knows that the math is not mathing. I wanted to be gentle. I wanted to be everything marriage counseling podcasts say a husband should be. But I kept seeing the months behind us. My wife on her phone with that careful angle away from me, the late nights at strategy sessions, the new perfume that cost more than our first month's rent, the gradual shift in pronouns from we to I, and then the funhouse mirror moment when love feels like a conspiracy theory you're not allowed to fact-check. When the baby arrived, the conspiracy ended and the documentary began. She said, "We can talk about this later." Later never saved anyone. Later is where relationship stories go to be embalmed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I didn't look at the child like a verdict. I looked at the form, which had an intention of its own. And I thought about the weight of a signature. "Husband refuses to sign birth certificate" is a headline that sounds like a villain's origin story. But sometimes refusing is just telling the truth out loud. A resident doctor, blonde and earnest, explained state law, how signing creates legal paternity even if biology is off drinking in a different neighborhood. He was trying to help. He told me I could be a father by heart, if not by DNA. And I told him I could also be a hostage by pen if I made the wrong move. In some cheating stories and infidelity stories, the husband stays quiet for the peace of it all. For the child, for the illusion. But illusions rack up interest faster than hospital parking. I asked for a DNA test, which is the line that turns a labor suite into a courtroom with better lighting. My wife, cheeks flushing a color the paint swatches never mention, said it wasn't necessary, that love was bigger than molecules. I believed that once. But love had also sent me to Target at midnight for prenatal vitamins she forgot were on the counter of a man's apartment we never discussed. Things I had ignored rose up like an army. The business conference where she left her charger, the hotel key that was the maid's, the Uber receipts that claimed she'd be home soon and then weren't. If you're searching these betrayal stories for a hero, skip this one. I'm just a man who stopped co-signing a lie. The nurse cleared her throat. My wife's mother started to channel a Hallmark judge. A real man signs. I told her a real man reads what he signs. Somewhere in the corridor, a newborn wailed like an alarm clock you can't snooze. The social worker, calm as tea, asked about our plan. My plan was to hold the truth like a hot skillet and not drop it. I said I would be there for the baby in every humane way, While the test did its quiet science, but I would not carve my name into legal granite for a story that didn't belong to me. On cue, my phone vibrated with a group chat from the guys, softball teammates, backyard beer philosophers, asking for baby photos. I typed, "Later," because later has a job after all. It's the waiting room outside a decision. The resident mentioned timelines. My wife mouthed, "Please." I remembered the morning 2 months earlier when I'd found a text thread labeled "Boss" with messages that sounded less like meetings and more like weather reports for a tropical body. She'd said it was a meme. I'd said okay. We were both lying. I held the bassinet's edge. The baby's tiny hand opened like a secret and closed like a promise I couldn't keep. Parody lives next door to tragedy. I imagined the future as a montage. PTA meetings where whispers traveled faster than crayons. Family drama stories told at Thanksgiving in the careful voice of people who pretend they don't gossip. Reddit stories written by usernames that sound like doorbells, throwaway something, arguing whether I was a monster or a boundary with legs. I wanted to reject the narrative that man equals paycheck and woman equals narrative control. I also wanted to avoid becoming an anecdote told with a smirk in a hair salon. "No," I said again, softer this time, not because I doubted, but because sometimes the bravest word wears slippers. When I walked out to the hallway to breathe, the vending machine blinked, "Choose." I laughed. Too loudly, like a parody of a man who thinks the universe leaves him messages. A dad in scrubs with applesauce stains congratulated me automatically. Hospitals teach strangers to bless each other without reading the plot. "Healthy baby?" he said. "Healthy truth," I answered, because I am annoying when I'm frightened. I called a lawyer. I called my brother. I called the version of me that still believed in the sitcom of us. He didn't pick up. The social worker returned and said we could proceed with a voluntary acknowledgement later if the test said what hope could not. I told her that sounded like due process for the heart. She smiled the way professionals do when civilians coin metaphors to survive the hour between who they were and who they are. I stepped back in, and my wife's eyes were full of that old house we used to live in. The one with the porch lights and the easy, boring love I miss like air. "I'm sorry," she said. But apologies in rooms with wristbands feel like coupons that expired 2 seasons ago. Somewhere, a printer hummed again. The clipboard waited. I didn't sign. You want the backstory the way Reddit Betrayal loves it. Timestamps, receipts, a villain who wears nice shoes. Fine. Reverse the film to 6 months before the hospital, to a Tuesday with the smell of coffee and the sound of the garage door that won't stop squeaking like a truth trying to get out. My wife had a boss who looked like he was born in an airport lounge. Tailored, moisturized, half apology, half promotion. He liked to say, "Circle back," the way preachers say amen. I met him at a holiday party where the shrimp were bigger than the honest part of his smile. He called my wife rock star, the workplace pet name for women who do 2 jobs and receive 1 salary and 3 texts at 2 a.m. He shook my hand with the confidence of a man who has never shopped for discount cereal with a calculator. I told myself to stop resenting success that wasn't mine. I told myself a lot of things I didn't believe. The conspiracy started as a joke. She'd come home late from client retention dinners, and I'd do that sitcom husband thing, wiggling my eyebrows, asking if the client felt adequately retained. She'd laugh and rise on her toes to kiss me like an alibi. I played along because relationship stories in our suburb are written by PR teams, not poets. There were signs, yes. A new gym membership she never used for the gym, a playlist that migrated from 2000 teens nostalgia to something breathless and bass-heavy, and a hotel points account that bloomed like a desert after rain. Most betrayal stories are quieter than you think. They sound like late and sorry and tomorrow. When I finally scrolled through her messages, not proud, not apologetic, I saw a language I wasn't fluent in. Inside jokes with clean teeth. Calendar invites for strategy, and selfies from angles that made business look like rehearsal for life. If cheating wife story is a genre, ours wanted awards. There were brunches with the team that became evenings with the boss that became Sundays for catching up. The affair had a rhythm, a heartbeat, a commute. I noticed the way she stood when she said his name, like the word held a window. I noticed the way she showered after meetings, the way our bed smelled like travel. Did I confront her? In a way. I asked if we were okay. She said we were fine. You'd be surprised how efficiently the word fine can paint over a flood. At church, I lit a candle for our marriage. At Costco, I bought paper towels like a man preparing for minor disasters. I told myself my loyalty was proof of character, not evidence of fear. On Reddit Betrayal, they'd call me a doormat. In my own head, I called myself a husband with stamina. The pregnancy arrived like a plot twist no writer would dare submit. She was late, she was nauseous. She was radiant in the way people become when a future sets up camp inside them. I remembered our first try years ago and the tiny silence that followed. Now we were here, and joy tried to lift me, and suspicion tried to nail me down. We went to appointments where sonographers were magicians pulling grayscale rabbits out of hats. The grainy face on the screen looked like every future and no one in particular. I talked to the bump like dads in commercials. I painted the spare room a color named after a fruit no one eats. If you want parody, here it is. I became more tender as the lies grew louder. I worked overtime to buy the nicer stroller. She kissed me with gratitude that wasn't about me. At night I lay awake narrating our family drama like a sportscaster who loves the underdog too much. The day I found the hotel charge that didn't match her itinerary, I drove to that address with the kind of calm cops write down. I didn't go inside. I watched the lobby door open and close, like a stage curtain introducing the same act. At 9:17 p.m., my wife walked out with her boss. He touched her elbow like a man showing off ownership of a vice. She laughed the laugh I used to think belonged to me. I didn't approach. I wanted to keep the last version of her I could live with. I drove home and sat in the dark. And in the morning, I made pancakes shaped like hope. I told myself I would confront her after the baby. I told myself the baby would save us. I told myself lies because sometimes the truth is too solvent and you are made of glue. When our daughter arrived, the geometry that had whispered for months spoke. My wife looked at me for a long time, the way travelers look at maps when the trail is not where it should be. I looked back like a man whose compass finally points. "It's not what you think," she said, because all scripts come with preloaded lines. In that moment, I remembered the DM from a stranger 2 weeks earlier. An anonymous Reddit account with 3 posts and a moral compass set to send. She claimed she'd seen my wife and her boss at a car wash holding hands, a detail too mundane to be fiction. I had ignored it. Now it played back in HD. Conspiracy theory had become documentary footage I couldn't unsee. We argued. We wept. She said mistakes happen like weather. I said weather doesn't text at midnight. She said we could be bigger than biology. I said biology doesn't need our permission. She called me a coward. I told her I was a witness. If you're looking for family revenge, I didn't throw anyone's clothes on the lawn. I collected documents. I scheduled appointments. Infidelity is chaos. I became paperwork. My wife wanted me to sign the birth certificate because ink is cheaper than truth. I wanted the DNA test because truth, though expensive, pays for itself. In the parking lot the next morning, I stood under a sky that looked like a ceiling for angels who were off the clock. I realized I had to be the adult in a romance that had run out of adults. I booked the lab. I called a lawyer recommended by a friend who'd learned similar lessons, cheaper, but harder. I texted my brother. No signature until results. He wrote back, "Proud of you. Hard is not wrong." Sometimes the only revenge story worth telling is the one where you stop lying to yourself. If you've never watched a suburban scandal go from whisper to group chat to next-door post with 17 comments about property values, I envy you. After the hospital stalemate, circles formed. Her parents called mine. My mother cried with that soft, devastating pride, telling me I was strong, like we were rehearsing a eulogy for the life we'd planned. My father asked practical questions about jurisdiction and paternity presumptions because dads of his generation attack emotion with logistics. My wife moved home to her mother's for a while, part strategy, part siege. Her boss sent an email that tried to be both apology and invoice. I'm sorry for any distress caused, plus a spreadsheet of expenses he'd happily cover, as if itemizing a soul. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who replied with a sentence that felt like armor. Do not engage outside counsel. On the internet, the story escaped its cage. Cheating wife Reddit loves a plot with paperwork. The DNA process was clinical and almost rude in its efficiency. Swabs, chain of custody, signatures that I did provide because I believe in science when it's wearing a lab coat and not a tuxedo. The waiting felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, pretending the wind is a chair. Meanwhile, the paperwork wars began. I learned how a name on a certificate can become a leash. The hospital called twice to follow up. The pediatrician's office asked for dad's info with bureaucratic innocence. A well-meaning friend suggested I sign now and sort it later, the kind of advice forged in fires that never burn the giver. I kept repeating the mantra my lawyer taught me. Facts first, feelings later, finances last. In American culture, we love a redemption arc, but we forget redemption needs truth the way engines need oil. Community theater commenced. Some friends chose sides like it was March Madness. One neighbor set a casserole on my porch, like empathy could be baked. Another asked if I'd consider forgiveness for the child's sake, which is how people ask you to swallow a grenade politely. I'm not cold. I'm not heartless. I'm a man who knows that signing would enshrine a lie and make the child a witness to it forever. Reddit Betrayal taught me. Don't ask me why I read it at 2 a.m. That family drama stories often become financial horror stories when paperwork outruns fairness. I decided my line was a boundary, not a weapon. I would buy diapers if needed. I would deliver groceries. I would show up when human beings are supposed to show up. I would not, however, weaponize my name against my future. My wife's version of events evolved with the weather. One day she confessed the affair, calling it a moment that lasted a season. The next day, she cited a break we never took. Another day, she said the boss manipulated her. Power dynamics, corporate pressure, the trap of flattery. All of that can be true and still not be a reason to name me father. In a strange turn that belongs in parody, the boss claimed the baby could be his but preferred to wait and see, as if paternity were a sunset. He offered to support outcomes like a venture capitalist describing a seed round. My lawyer drafted a request that read like a spell. He was, as they say, put on notice. If you're looking for family revenge, it looks boring from the outside. It's certified mail and timestamps and the word hereby. I made a list of what I could control. My kindness, my schedule, my sleep, my food, my refusal to sign. I started running before sunrise, the hour where regret falls asleep and courage stretches. I saw a therapist who asked harder questions than the judge in my head. She told me to name the loss, not litigate it. I told her I'd lost the story of us, the calm inside the forecast, The way our dog used to sit with her chin on my wife's knee while we watched shows we never finished. She said grief isn't a courtroom, it's a geography. I nodded like a man about to get lost on purpose, because sometimes getting lost is the fastest route to an honest map. The DNA results arrived on a Thursday that smelled like rain. The envelope looked ordinary, the way angels do in movies before they glow. I sat at the kitchen table with a coffee that had cooled into autobiography. I opened the letter and read 3 lines that moved me from suspect to fact. 0.00% probability of paternity. The number felt both cruel and liberating, like a key that opens a door to a room you didn't want to build. I didn't shout, I didn't text, "Told you." I closed my eyes and thanked the quiet. Then I forwarded a scanned copy to my lawyer, who replied with the legal equivalent of a head nod. We proceed. When I told my wife, she stared at me with a grief that made me want to lie. I didn't. I told her the baby needed her, and the baby needed the truth about her father. And the baby needed none of us to pretend we could sculpt biology with good intentions. She asked if I would reconsider signing for stability. I told her stability begins where fiction ends. I offered help that didn't require me to disappear inside a story that wasn't mine. She cried in that way we reserve for the last act, and I cried too. This isn't triumph. This is surgery without music. On the internet, the tale found its tags. Husband refuses to sign birth certificate. Cheating wife gives birth to mixed baby. Wife cheating short story that grew teeth and laws. Strangers wrote essays about me, about her, about the baby, about justice. Some wanted me to adopt. Some wanted me to flee. A few wanted me to light things on fire. I did none of the above. I built a boundary and watered it like a garden. I kept my job. I saw my brother's kids more. I fed my dog carrots because she likes the crunch. I slept. Revenge arrived quietly, not as destruction, but as equilibrium. Family revenge isn't always scorched earth. Sometimes it's choosing not to live inside a lie. People expect a crescendo, a courtroom with oak and echoes, a judge whose gavel is a thunderclap. Our ending was duller and kinder. My wife, ex-wife now, because paperwork writes endings too, filed with her lawyer to establish paternity with the man who should have been at the hospital holding a pen instead of a parking validation. It took months, because reality is unionized and works banker's hours. During that time, I became a kind of ghost who still received mail. I was asked to sign forms for things I had not created, and each time I declined, politely, decisively, until declining became not a rebellion, but my ordinary breath. The boss tried to negotiate a heroic narrative for himself, a PR arc where he steps up and takes responsibility. He posted a photo once, a soft, filtered mirror selfie with a caption about gratitude and growth. I didn't comment. The only revenge that mattered had already happened. He had the life he built. I learned things about myself that weren't available in the suburbs where I'd lived unknowingly. I learned I can love a child who is not mine without stealing her story. I learned I can stand in a room where everyone wants me to sign and still keep my hand in my pocket like a citizen who knows the law. I learned that American culture loves a family drama because it's practice for forgiving ourselves. On quiet nights, I missed the idea of us so fiercely I had to sit on my hands. I still kept a box with the paint chips for the nursery, a relic of a different timeline, proof that grief is a museum with free admission and no closing hours. If you're reading this among relationship stories searching for a moral, I'll disappoint you. Life rarely rhymes cleanly. I see the baby sometimes, at drop-offs, at accidental overlaps, a little comet with a schedule. I bring a bag with snacks and silence. I don't post about it. This isn't content. it's living. My ex and I text like colleagues who were once cosmonauts together. We are polite in public and honest on calendars. She apologized again, the kind that doesn't erase, the kind that names. I told her I accept the apology, but not the premise. Acceptance is not adoption. We walk parallel streets now and wave at the intersections. That's as cinematic as it gets. As for me, I moved apartments. I found a place with fewer rooms and more sky. I started cooking. Badly, then less badly. I boxed up artifacts from the era of us and shipped some to my brother's garage, where nostalgia goes to nap. I joined a pickup basketball league for men whose knees are autobiographies. On Sundays, I drink coffee outside and pretend the clouds are making a map for me. Sometimes they are. I date carefully, like a museum visitor who stands at the rope and reads the plaque before falling in love with the art. I tell my story early because secrets are mortgages with ugly rates. A few women have thanked me for the honesty. One or two have declined the sequel. That's fair. We are all choosing how much of each other's past to host. If this were one of those family drama stories that chase virality, the finale would feature the boss losing his job, the ex experiencing a revelation in a thunderstorm, me becoming a step-something in a blended sitcom that critics call surprisingly warm. Real life, though, is a different channel. The boss is still moisturized. The company sent out an email about policy review. The HR department held a training with clip art. A year later, a rumor said he moved divisions, which is corporate for "we do not discuss miracles." My ex learned the choreography of newborn nights, then toddler mornings. Her mother still insists I am family. I send a fruit basket at Christmas and spend the afternoon with my brother's kids assembling a Lego set that requires a PhD in patience. The world did not end. It just corrected. On a page like Reddit Betrayal, where betrayal stories and cheating stories travel under neon titles, this will be filed as a husband refuses to sign birth certificate plot. It's also a cheating wife story, a cheating wife Reddit artifact, an infidelity story that didn't become a fire, but an architecture lesson. What I built after the explosion is sturdier than what stood before, because the beams are made of no. The fantasy elements? Sometimes at night, I imagine a parallel universe where she came home from that first strategy session, looked me in the eyes, and said the sentence that could have saved us. I'm in trouble, and I need you to see me. In that universe, we sell the stroller and buy boundaries. We cry in the kitchen and then go to counseling and then rebuild. In this universe, I get to tell you that even without that miracle, there is life after. Not perfect, not deserving of a 13-episode order, but sturdy and honest and mine. I promised myself not to end with advice, but stories are slippery and like to smuggle morals when the guards are tired. So here's my contraband. If you are standing in a hospital under that fluorescent honesty and someone is asking your pen to do theology, remember this. A signature is a story you agree to tell forever. If the story isn't yours, don't narrate it. Choose the quiet revenge of boundaries. Choose the science that ignores the applause. Choose the small, boring bravery that never trends. You can be kind without disappearing. You can love without pretending. You can refuse without hating. And one day, if the clouds are in the mood, they will write your next map in a sky only you can read.